Hi, I'm Shirley Jones, and this is Gemma Wenger's Hollywood.
Academy Award nominee for The Godfather, so that's probably what you're best known for.
Boy, I'm pretty good, yeah.
Yeah, and 4-time Golden Globe Award nominee.
Yeah, I never win anything. It's just like getting awards and no jobs. I'd rather get a job. They're going to give me a piece of glass.
I
can't eat
You eat
glass.
regular
Oh,
that
nice.
way.
God bless. Thank you.
God bless you. You take care.
How about a kiss goodbye? Adios.
Hello, I'm Martin Landau.
Hi, I'm Florence Henderson, and you're watching Gemma Wenger's Hollywood.
I'm Gemma Wenger, and you're watching Gemma Wenger's Hollywood, and I have a very, very special guest with me today. She is a true beauty. She has been compared to Marilyn Monroe and Jane Mansfield. She starred in the hit ABC sitcom Too Close for Comfort opposite Ted Knight. She is just a doll. Welcome, Lydia. Lydia Cornell. Oh, it's just so.
You're a beauty.
Oh, you're so sweet. You're such a doll. Well, you just have had a really long career in Hollywood. You've been on The Love Boat, Charlie's Angels, The Drew Carey Show, Full House, Knight Rider, Curb Your Enthusiasm, everything.
And Too Close for Comfort. I played Ted Knight's daughter in Too Close for Comfort in the 80s. It was on after Three's Company.
Oh.
And that's my big... ABC made me into a sex symbol in those days. And that was a tough thing to be promoted as.
Right.
Bikini posters.
Right. Now, you actually missed the interview, and they said interviews are closed, and they saw you in the lobby crying, and they said, oh my goodness, we want her. What happened?
I was the last girl they saw. They had 400 women they'd seen for the part of Sarah Rush. I was supposed to play 18 years old. I think I was 23. And I got off the bus. It was my first week in town. I rushed into the audition. It was raining. And I was wearing a letter sweater, a cheerleader sweater, because the part was for a cheerleader. And the secretary said, they finished, you're late. They're not going to see you anymore. And I said, I've come all this way. I started to cry. And then Arnie Sultan, who created Get Smart with Mel Brooks, he comes out of the interview room with Tom Werner. And they say, let her come in and read. She looks the part. So I went in and I read the lines with the casting director, and one of the lines in the script says, Sarah gives Dad a raspberry. So I, not knowing what a raspberry is in showbiz lingo, I pick up an imaginary raspberry and I hand it to the producer and I go, so there. And he goes, what is this you're giving me? What is this thing? I said, I'm giving you a raspberry. He goes, don't you know what a raspberry is? It's a Bronx cheer, which is... You want to do one?
No, you do one.
That's okay, so in showbiz language, that's what a raspberry is.
Wow.
So I got the part because they thought, how could she be that dumb?
I
had to play a dumb blonde.
Good for you. God had his hand in it. You know, the first interview I went on was for Hanna-Barbera's Heidi, and I missed it. I had a sports event, and I couldn't make it, and I was like, I missed it, and they called me in the next day, and I got it.
Oh my God!
So when it's meant to be, meant to be. You have the look, you have the personality.
Oh, but there's a God shot. I have to tell you my God shot that happened.
So yes, let's talk about God shots, because I looked it up. A God shot refers to an unexpected favor or a sign. The phrase attributes to a profound happening that cannot be explained, but not quite as remarkable as a miracle. It can be when God miraculously causes something beneficial to happen to you or for you.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah. I actually started experiencing these firsthand. The first one I had was way before I had my spiritual awakening, I call it, in that audition. The next day after that raspberry audition, they had me come to meet the network. I had to meet the head of the network, ABC. I was one of the 5 finalists for the role. And I go in wearing a virginal little flowered dress, and all the other girls were wearing skin-tight cutoffs and, hanging out. And I'm like a virgin, and they wanted a virginal sex symbol. So I read with Ted Knight, and they were cheering, and they said, you have the part. And I said, they usually call your agent right after that. And it was such a magical interview. And right at that moment, the girl who plays my sister, Deborah von Valkenburg, she says to me, "What's your name?" Because she was cast as my sister already. I go, "Lydia Cornell. It's a strange Russian name, Kornilov." And she said, "I work for a Gregory Kornilov in New York City, but he lives in Holland now, where my parents lived."
Oh,
And
wow.
for the same shipping company my dad worked for, and I said, "You worked for my father?" Out of all the 10 million people in New York City, my sister, my TV sister, worked for my dad. So that's a coincidence that's a little too uncanny to be random.
Yes,
And
yes.
Einstein said, "Coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous." Einstein said that.
Yes, yes.
So-
nothing is happenstance.
Yeah. So in other words, these kind of coincidences, they're like little breadcrumbs along the way in life. They put you together, they match you. I've had so many of these matchups that have...
Now, I read somewhere that you're the great-great-great-great-granddaughter of Harriet Beecher Stowe.
Yeah, that's my grandmother, my great-great-grandmother.
That's amazing. So she wrote Uncle Tom's
Tom's
Cabin. So she was an abolitionist,
Yeah.
and she kind of created the movement against slavery. And made it real.
Yeah, she
How
started the Civil War. No,
She started the Civil War.
She
Yes,
helped
yes,
win the
she
Civil
did.
War for the Yankees.
Wow, that's amazing.
It is amazing.
Now, I read you've come from a very religious family. What did that look like back then?
Apparently her husband, which was Henry Ward Beecher, was a preacher. So my grandfather's named Henry Ward Beecher Stowe. But I am Irish, Russian, and Cherokee Indian. My great-grandmother was actually half Cherokee Indian, as a lot of Americans,
Yes.
no jokes. Russian, Irish, and Cherokee Indian. Thank God none of those nationalities have a drinking problem.
Right.
So that, like,
right.
you know.
Well, talking about that, you actually had a situation happen with your son, and then that kind of got you on the road to sobriety.
Oh, it's kind of one of those miraculous... The story of my life is Falling Up, and that's the title of one of my books. Every bad thing can turn into something good. We're redeemed every day. We have the idea of we can be resurrected on a daily basis. No matter how far down we've gone, if we suddenly turn our lives over to God. And I didn't know God very well. I didn't know what God was. I was raised in a Methodist church and then Christian Science. My father was a Greek Orthodox. Russian, it's kind of Russian Orthodox. It's almost close to Catholic. But I didn't understand religion in those days.
Right.
But when I first had my crash and burn with my little boy, alcoholism is an actual disease, dis-ease, and it's a separation from God. And I didn't know anything about God until I got sober. And in 1994, I kept hearing about AA, and I went, "What is AA?" I know you say the Lord's Prayer in the meetings, and I didn't know what it was, if it was a prayer group.
So now you were in Too Close for Comfort. So you were actually a Hollywood blonde bombshell.
Yeah.
In the movie industry. How was that?
That is the most superficial, strange, unnatural thing to become. To have to be you're suddenly on every magazine cover. I was on Slimmer, Shape, People, Us. One of the magazines was called Body Watching, and they had my bikini figure on the cover. ABC promoted me with posters and bikinis, and I was on all fours, and it looked savage. It was really kind of disturbing, and at that point, you have to stay thin and perfect, and your whole life revolves around how you look.
And
as
were
you know, as
just
a woman, it's
a
not
little gal
fun.
from El Paso, Texas.
I was
So
from El
this
Paso.
a whole different ballgame.
Oh my gosh, who knew? I mean, we knew that Farrah Fawcett, I remember Farrah Fawcett had a poster. They had me do a poster. They paid me a fortune. And suddenly the poster's everywhere. And there's these really sexy pictures of me, and it was kind of embarrassing for my parents to see. I was a bit mortified. And you'd be in the National Enquirer every now and then, you just see your picture. They'd use pictures from all over the world. And I became really insecure.
It made you insecure.
It made me crazy. It actually
because
made
the
me...
focus was your body
Right.
and what you looked like,
Can you
rather
imagine?
than who
Yeah.
you were.
Exactly. And I already had a business degree, a Bachelor of Science degree in business. I'd written a book on the Russian Revolution. I was a real writer. And I auditioned for the sitcom after 3 auditions. I always wanted to be an actress because in Texas I was in every play as a child. I visited my father in the symphony. He was the first violinist in the El Paso Symphony. So when they did an opera, I would be backstage looking at the scenery and the set design. I was in love with the theater and the world of make-believe. But I also had a mother whom I love very dearly, who was extremely harsh with me as far as you have to look perfect at all times, not a hair out of place. Children are better seen, not heard. Yeah. That's how it was in those days. And I literally curtsied. When we moved to New York when I was 11, and I curtsied to all the teachers in the hallway and all the people. They went, "Who are you? What is this? You're curtsying." So it was such a culture shock to move from Texas to New York at the age of 11 in puberty. Imagine. Yeah. But as far as my childhood, it was extremely difficult because my mother, we didn't know she was bipolar.
Okay.
Until 3 years ago.
Okay.
So
Give
I was
it
the
a
one.
Name. You go, this is not right. There's something strange and unusual here. Yeah. And now you know it's bipolar.
So she took a lot of her anxiety about being a woman in the 50s out on me. And it was whoever, the firstborn child, you know, you have to be, you're an extension of me. You have to be perfect. And there was a lot of pain growing up with my mom. It was not, I felt like show business would give me the love I didn't get at home. I think a lot of us come to Hollywood thinking we're going to become famous for the wrong reasons.
Right.
Fame is a drug, and it's like the lust for fame is kind of an American malaise. I think it's sort of a strange malignancy we have here. Celebrity.
Yes.
Because it teaches you to look at other people as your higher power. You know, they're gods to us. The stars, the movie stars.
Yes, yes.
And
idols.
They're idols. They're false idols. And I love my mother, and I had the most amazing, incredible story of forgiveness with her that's gave me proof of God in my life. And I do a lot of public speaking on this. But during the show, we would go out after every show on a Friday night, and we'd all drink. And we'd all go out together with Ted Knight and everyone. I began drinking during the week. Those are the days of cocaine. People were using drugs. I lived here in Bel Air. I dated rock stars. I had the Eagles lived around the corner, Don Henley, and
really.
And I remember just so many fun, crazy, wild days. I traveled the world, went to Monte Carlo, Prince Albert. You know, I dated Prince Albert briefly.
Oh, wow.
I dated Dodi Fayed, the Princess Di's ex.
Yes.
I lived the high life, but mainly it was just trying to glitz and glamour, trying to cover up the pain and the loneliness.
I was going to say, were you happy?
No.
Were you happy?
And it's interesting because it looks like I was happy. I had a hit series. I was making a fortune.
Ton of money.
I bought a big home in Bel Air around the corner.
Wow.
And I think I had everything. And it's just the typical story. You think you have everything. And yet, if you don't look perfect the next day, and if you're hungover, and if you can't keep up the appearances, you feel like a failure. Well, one time there was Jerry Bruckheimer's producing partner, it was Don Simpson, he produced Top Gun. He invited me on a date, and I went on the date with him, and I was starring in a play the next day. I was the lead in a play, and he and I sat up all night doing cocaine, and I never made it to the play I was starring in.
You're kidding.
Which caused the director to quit show business altogether. Now I can actually laugh at these things, but if you have this disease called alcoholism, which when I say disease, it's a spiritual malady. And they sometimes say it has a genetic component, or you've had a really, really painful childhood, or it's just a cover and you can't. The first drink takes the second drink. It's a poison. So another weird thing happened after the show ended. I had to keep going. You had to keep trying to get other roles, right?
Right.
So I was on every Love Boat you can name. I was on 6 Love Boats, 3 hotels, 2 Charlie's Angels, Knight Rider, A-Team, Full House, Quantum Leap, Curb Your Enthusiasm, and I was constantly trying to get that other big shot.
Role.
Another big series, right? But I never felt really good about myself, and I was really a writer underneath it all.
Yeah,
and
you
I
had
wanted,
that talent, that gift from God.
Yeah, I had a vision and a creative. Being an actress is so, you have to read lines someone else writes, and they're usually just sexy lines about you're the sex symbol, you're the object. Men are looking at you with lust.
Right.
You're never the one with the power, usually.
Right. I mean, even with me, like, I would always play sports, but then I thought, well, look, so-and-so's the cheerleader. I'd like to do that. And then when I became the cheerleader, I didn't fit. It didn't work for me. I was made to play sports, not be the cheerleader.
Wow.
Well, I mean, I was looking at the cheerleader going, oh, wow. And then I became the cheerleader and I go, this isn't all that it's cracked up to be. I would rather be playing. That's where my desire was.
Oh, it's interesting. I had to dumb myself down to get along with everyone in Hollywood. I had to act dumb. I developed a little girl voice. I mean, you don't get this voice without trying. No, but I mean, I'm writing a book called Hiding My Brain in My Bra, which is for some reason, after I found God in a huge, hilarious way, I have the most amazing story, I think. It's just, everyone has a unique story, but mine is...
Tell us.
I will, but
okay.
Everything became funny. I was able to write comedy. Like, the world became funny to me. Everything that ever happened to me has a humorous spin on it.
Right.
It's interesting how we each get a different gift.
Now, you talked about how you forgave your mom, how you were able to do that.
Well, this is pretty big. First, I have to tell the story of what happened in high school. I wasn't allowed to date. We lived in Scarsdale, New York, and I wanted to be Jewish in the worst way. I wanted to be a Jewish male comic, but my parents weren't supportive.
Right.
That's
you
a
always
joke.
Want what you don't have.
Yeah, because everyone in Scarsdale was Jewish, and I was from El Paso, Texas. I spoke Spanish, and I lived on the border, and I loved my life, but I've never seen big green trees before. I'd never been in a lush place like New York, and I didn't fit in at all. So I was a fish out of water, and I would go to school curtsying and saying yes ma'am and yes sir to everybody in the hallways.
Right.
And everyone goes, what's wrong with you? What's, the New York accent. And so it was difficult. They didn't allow me to date. And finally I had one date in high school. And I had long, long chestnut hair down to my waist. And I had acne. And the hair covered the acne. So one day I was looking in the mirror, combing my hair, and my mother, who was so frightened of sex or boys, she wouldn't even let me wear clogs because she thought any high heel is a streetwalker. She's very, very puritanical. She came looking in the room, and she comes into the room, she sees me looking in the mirror, and she says, "You think you're pretty with that long hippie hair? I'll show you." And she grabs me by the hair with the largest scissors I've ever seen, and she cut it off above my ear line.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I'm so she doesn't remember doing this, and that's why she looked like she blacked out a little. And I'm screaming, and it was something out of a Bette Davis movie. It felt like
It's abusive.
Yeah, but I didn't know that at the time, and I just thought, what did I do wrong? Mommy, please.
Yeah.
And I couldn't go to school without wearing a scarf.
Sorry, I couldn't
Thank
imagine.
you.
I mean, I remember one time my mom grabbed my hair right here and she goes, "You got to get rid of this broom," and she pulled on it,
Yeah.
It wasn't like, "Let me help you make yourself better." It's just very condescending, critical, judgmental, angry, putting you down.
It's sad because I now see my mother from all angles, and I love her so much, but I had to go through a lot to overcome this. So what happened was she...
There had to be some jealousy there, too, as she said, "You think
so.
you're so pretty." Maybe your youth.
I studied this through psychology before I got sober, and all these beautiful gifts started happening. Absolute miracles happened after this. This is one of the stories along the way, though. But an adult child of a person who's bipolar, or an adult child of a narcissist, and I don't use that word lightly. This is the new buzzword now for psychology, but a narcissist parent projects all their self-loathing onto their firstborn, or the one they identify with the most. So I got all her attention and all her loathing and all her abuse because she thought I was her. I'm just another...
It affects the firstborn the most.
Right. So she didn't treat me like I had my own identity. And whenever I rebelled and said, "Mommy, I'm a person," she thought I was against her. And it was like this war, this toxic energy for years.
Didn't make sense.
Yeah, it went on forever. And I could never have a phone call with her that wasn't like, I have to get off the phone, but she'll get her feelings hurt. I had to take care of her feelings my whole life. So what happened when I went to college, I had the original Barbie, Ken, and Midge. Not the original Barbie, but one of the early Barbies. She was the bubble cut Barbie with the red hair. And the dream house and all these beautiful dolls. And I had the original Ken doll with the arm fell off, the hair was made of fuzz.
My mom never bought me a Barbie or a Ken
You're
or
too young.
anything. No, I'm
You're
not.
younger than
No,
I am.
I'm not. I just never had one. I went to Kansas and they had dolls, and we put clothes on the dolls, and that was the most fun ever.
Oh, wow.
So go on.
So anyway, I had these dolls, and I wasn't really into dolls so much as I knew they were going to be worth a fortune someday. And they were kind of my only thing I still owned from childhood. So I said, Mom, whatever you do, don't give these away. And don't give away my dresses. I designed all my own clothes and sewed them all in our attic in New York. And I put them in this very beautiful, clean attic. Mom was a clutter freak. She didn't allow one piece of clutter. So I hid them in a closet. They weren't in anyone's way. And I said, whatever you do, never give these away, Mom. Well, the first semester I come home from college, they're gone. And I could not get over this resentment. I held this and I harbored it. And she would apologize. She was very maudlin in her apologies. She would like, oh, please forgive me. It would go.
like
She
fake
didn't.
tears.
Yeah.
Kind of fake.
Kind of fake, but we didn't need those anyway, and go back and forth. And I couldn't forgive her. And cut to 1994. The series is over. I've starred in lots of other shows. I have a brand new baby boy, 6 months old. On Labor Day weekend, I went out drinking. And during the pregnancy, I didn't drink at all. I was a single mother. And I decided, I kept trying to figure out what's wrong with me. Why am I not happy? I was such a good mother in the beginning after this thing happened. So this is the very beginning, after the baby was born. I was alone in the house, and I could hear him crying in the next room. And I had been drinking all night because this guy that I thought I was going to marry, another one, came over to say he'd met the love of his life. And he wasn't even the person I liked. He was an old friend that I thought, well, finally I'll have a dad for Jack, because this man's always available. He's been the one in my back pocket, you know, that
He's
kind
like
of thing.
a friend.
Yeah. And I couldn't get over that he brought over a bottle of vodka. So I went up, I had the baby in his room in the crib, and I drank. And I woke up the next morning hearing him crying in the other room, wailing, and then the doorbell was ringing downstairs. I had a Beverly Hills townhouse with a long, steep staircase. My mother was coming over to introduce me to Uncle Sonny, her favorite cousin.
Okay.
And I knew I had to be dressed to the hilt. And I was already noon, and I was in my nightgown still, and I was bleary-eyed. And I went in and I picked up my baby. I think I changed him at the diaper table, and I went over to the top of the stairs, holding him, and I went into a complete blackout. A blackout. To this day, I don't know how I got down the stairs without killing my son and myself. And on the other end of that story, my mother, all I remember was they opened the door and she looked horrified, and they grabbed the baby from me, and I went to bed for 3 days, sobered up, and a week later I walked down to my sister's house. They invited me to dinner, and it was an intervention. And the whole family was there, and my little baby brother. He was 4 years younger than me at the time. I call him my baby brother. And they said, we're taking the baby away from you if you don't get sober. And I said, I'm fine. I'm fine. I didn't know. It was a cover-up. I was wearing a mask. I could never quite admit. And this is what happened a couple days later. I pointed at my brother, and I said, he's the one with the problem. He smokes pot. And they said, but you're the one with the baby. We're taking your baby away from you. And I promised them. I said, there was a doctor there, and I said, doctor, I'll go to Brotman Hospital tomorrow. And that's where all the celebrities go to meet with a rehab counselor. So I went wearing a short, dark wig. I'm too famous to be sober, I thought, you know. I go in, and he says, Lydia, everybody in town that's creative and doing any good work is sober. All the artists here, movie stars, actors, you know, he listed names, and I kept saying, well, okay, I'll do the 28-day rehab, but I went home and I cried, and I decided I'm going to go try something else.
Okay.
On September 11th, that morning, I walked into the Good Shepherd Church in Beverly Hills.
I've been there before.
At 10 a.m., wearing a hat and sunglasses. And I'd never been to an AA meeting, and to this day, I don't know how I got to that meeting. I didn't drive. I might have taken a cab. But I was so ready. But I was still incognito, hiding. I walk into this beautiful room of women and cinnamon pastries and coffee, and I heard someone at the podium say, if you've wandered into this room and you don't know you're an alcoholic, let's put it this way. virgins don't take pregnancy tests. And the whole room roared with laughter. And it felt like a beautiful place of a lot of women, very classy, very well-dressed. And they suddenly say, are there any alcoholics present? And my hand shot up without my permission, of its own volition. And I'm looking up going, and at that moment, a river of I just cried.
Release.
And 20 years of hell came off my shoulders when I surrendered
To God.
And that was my first prayer, my first real prayer of help me. I mean, I'm powerless. And what's so wonderful about the program of the 12 steps is that you're powerless, and the only power that can help you is God, a power greater than yourself. A lot of people can't say the word God right away. They were raised in very harsh religious families or punishing, the fear and punishing version of God. And there's so much love in that room. And at the end of this meeting, everyone came over and wrapped their, a whole bunch of women. It was a women's meeting. And there were famous faces in the room, and there were all sorts of people I thought, that person's in this program?
Yeah.
They've all been, some of them in jail before. They all have amazing stories. They're all witty and hilarious.
Yeah.
But there was so much love. And then a woman takes me home. She says, let's go home and talk in your garden. And this is what the cool thing. I'm so kind of open. I feel like a child again.
Yes.
And she takes me home, and we sit outside and we make coffee, and she says this to me out of the blue, not knowing anything about my story. And the day before, I'd had a huge fight with my mother about the Barbies. My mother had also, there's some weird things that happened with us, and we had this huge screaming fight about it. There was a Barbie musical coming out or something, and I brought it up again. And this woman says, So the woman takes me home, and she says, Lydia, you're going to overcome every resentment you ever had in this program. Aww. For example, I overcame a lifelong resentment against my mother for giving away my Barbies.
God shot.
And the hair on my neck went up, and I said, am I on a hidden camera show? Is this a joke?
God was speaking.
And she said, no, did that happen to you too? By the way, I've never heard this story since or before. And all my life I felt I was off track, and I was suddenly snapped into divine alignment at that moment. A divine alignment. And that was God's beautiful little wink. I call it a God shot. It was such a beautiful snapshot of uncanny coincidence.
Wow.
That I could not say was random.
God was speaking to you.
And I had hundreds of those
directly.
after that, hundreds of those things. All that year. I've never had a drink since. That was 25 years ago.
So you surrendered to the Lord.
Yeah,
Gave
and it
your
was
life to God, and He started the healing process
Yes.
from all that hurt, even that abuse from your mom.